Hello, everyone. So we're here with the wonderful Jonathan Kohler and Austin McFarland, and I'm Brian Corbin. If you don't know, I'm the owner of Corbin Clarinet Products, and we're the distributor of Royal Global products in the USA. Austin McFarland's our sales manager, and we're really excited today because we have basically the first Royal artist ever, and that is Jonathan Kohler. So Jonathan, we're so happy to have you and welcome to you and Austin as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very excited about your project here with Royal Global.
Hey, Jonathan, just to get us started here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the projects you're working on and just like what you do day to day and everything you're involved in?
Well, like most people, since COVID hit last March, I was on the verge of embarking on a 5-city tour of China right when everything shut down. In fact, I had everything confirmed, and then my first stop was going to be in the city of Wuhan. And I got a text message. The guy said, my contact in one said, we have this virus here. I think it's better maybe you don't come this time. And then everything spiraled from there. At first I rescheduled to other cities, and then within a couple of weeks it was all gone. But so I haven't played a live concert since last March, 2020. But the good thing is that that's given me time to get some other projects done, do a bunch of other things. Been doing lots of master classes online. I've been finishing up and publishing recordings. I've been writing software. I put out a new software package called Kohler Classical, which is now the leading software in the world for classical music editing. And that was released just about a year and a half ago. And I've been teaching, of course. We've actually been teaching live at Longy School of Music, where I teach, since September. I still have some students that are, Zoom, but I've been teaching classes in chamber music and stuff live starting back in September. So that's been nice. It's nice to actually see people face to face, I'm working on I've done a series of master classes online, live broadcast all over the world, and working on a festival for the end of June. That's going to be an intensive week-long festival with 5 artists that I'm going to be announcing soon. I won't announce yet, but very, very soon. And of course, last August, in the middle of the whole thing, I came out with my Mozart recording, featuring, of course, the first recording of the Royal Global Basset Clarinet right here, which I designed. So that's the lovely Royal Global Basset. And it now comes, of course, with the Kohler Bell, but also now the new adjustable barrel from Royal.
Well, that's all exciting. I mean, you just touched on quite a few things, and I kind of want to break down a few of them if you don't mind. I mean, anybody in the clarinet world, if you don't know Jonathan Kohler, I would be really surprised. I mean, a lot of times when I was growing up, the recordings that I would find when I was looking for reference recordings, or teachers would suggest recordings, your name was always one of the first ones that would pop up in a lot of those, recordings, from Mozart, and Weber to, I mean, you just name it. They're really out there. And I know that, for me, like that, very good, perfect on that. I mean, you can just research Jonathan Kohler and look at his bio. I mean, Fanfare Magazine, they described you as the preeminent, most recorded soloist of your time. You talked about the Kohler Classical, that software that you're doing. You've been involved with computer magazine business, with some editing and publishing there. I just have to ask you, I mean, all of these things that are kind of non-clarinet related, specifically a degree in physics, not music. How does all of that sort of lead you back down to the clarinet?
Well, I've been playing the clarinet since I was 10. We all started, in the public school lessons and stuff like that, right? Like everybody. And I've been doing computers since I was 10. And so, I went to school, actually starting in high school, I was already working in the computer business, writing software and doing stuff. And I continued to do that to make money to help pay for my Harvard education, which I had to pay for about half of myself. So I was working in the computer business, also playing in orchestras and doing things. So I was always doing both simultaneously. And I was in the TMC, the fellowship program at Tanglewood when I was 18. So I was the youngest wind player there. That was my first year at Harvard. And I've always tried to keep many things going at the same time. I've never gone down one path. In fact, I went to Harvard and did tons of music there, but that wasn't my major because I like doing lots of things. So I majored in physics and math, but I worked in computers, and I played in the Nashua Symphony, and I ran chamber music ensembles. And so I've always been doing all of this stuff. It's not that I went away and came back. It's just I've always been doing a lot of things, you know?
And I have to say, I mean, you just hit on kind of a crucial point. It's not that you went away and came back. It's that you were always simultaneously doing other things. And I think when we talk about today, especially in terms of getting in the music business, having an entrepreneurial, mindset, sometimes I would argue that getting outside of the clarinet can be more beneficial than just simply focusing on only the clarinet. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think in today's world, you need to have a variety of skills, and the traditional road of practice your orchestral excerpts, take orchestra auditions is a very limited path, first of all, and there aren't that many jobs available, and to tell you the truth, it's not that interesting of a career path. I had played in orchestras when I was young and decided, okay, I've done Tanglewood, I've done Colorado Phil, I've played principal in several different orchestras, and that's great experience, but I don't want to do that for my career. I'd rather conduct orchestras than play in them. And when you read the surveys about job satisfaction, orchestral players rank just above prison guards for job satisfaction. So they're not very happy with the positions because they don't have a lot of control over their lives. And I've always preferred to have control over my life. So I do a lot of different things and make my own projects and do my own things,
Yeah, and I'll tell you that I'm sort of in a very similar mindset. I mean, I loved all of the things that I did, around music, going to school and all of those things. But I realized that just like you, I wanted a little bit more control. And even for the joy that clarinet playing brought me, I was a little selfish, and I realized that I could still have that joy whether somebody was paying me to do that or not. And so what if I did some other things, make sure I could survive and have a good living, so that music became something I chose to do rather than I had to do to make a living. So, I love hearing, you talk about that, and I'm sure your students probably hear these things from you as well. So, I want to talk a little bit more about just the beginning of Royal, and how you even first met Yuan Gao, who is the owner of what's now known as Royal Global. Can you talk a little bit about that first time you met him and how that early years developed?
Sure, that was very interesting. I first met Ewan when he was 12 years old, and I had been invited. This was, let me think what year it was. Around 1995, I think it was. I met a couple of Chinese guys at the Clarinet Fest, which was in Lubbock, Texas that year. And they were talking about organizing the first ever International Clarinet Festival in China. So I talked to them for a while. And before that festival happened, I got invited by the guy at the Shanghai Conservatory. So I went there in 97. Then in 98, they organized the big first International Clarinet Festival in China, and it was in Beijing. And at that festival, there was myself and about 10 other international artists that were invited. And then, of course, lots of Chinese people. And at that festival, I was teaching master classes and performing. And one of the students that played for me was the 12-year-old Yuan Gao. and he was quite impressive. And I remember he had a younger cousin who was 10 years old who also played for me, also very impressive. She doesn't play clarinet anymore, but she was impressive at the time. And he played for me, and then we kept in touch. And he played beautifully. And so at that time, it was very, very difficult for students to get visas to come to the United States. So he tried many times. He applied many times and was rejected over and over again. And eventually, I think when he was 16 or 17 or so, he went to to Austria first, because it was easy to get a visa to go there. And he went there and he studied with Peter Schmidl from Vienna Phil. And so he studied with him for a little bit. And then he went, I forget if that was a year or two there. And then he went to Belgium to study with Eddie Van Oosthuizen. And he was with Eddie for a year or two. I forget the exact amount. But then at some point while he was in Belgium, he suddenly was able to get a visa. And the day he got the visa, he called me, he said he's coming, or he emailed me or something, said he's coming. He sold all of his belongings and showed up here with just his clarinet and nothing else. He hadn't even made a plan to get a place to live. He just arrived here. So he had no place to live. He knew nobody, right? And he arrived. This Longy had been working with him, and they said that they had arranged to get him his the paperwork he needed for the visa and this and that. But he just showed up here. We had to find him a place to stay first, So it was kind of amazing. He said, but as soon as he got that approval, he hopped on an airplane.
That just, to me, I mean, what a story of just a beginning, right? Just an origin story. A guy who's trying everything he can, to get into this country, like a lot of people, other people, and finally it worked out. And to have so much faith and trust to just say, you know what, I'm going there. We're going to make something happen. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he was amazing. And then he started out as a student in the undergraduate program, but then switched into the artist diploma program after a year or two. And I remember he was working. He didn't have a lot of money, so he worked. You probably know he's a very talented chef, and so he got permission so that he could work in the restaurant industry. So he was cooking and he was doing all kinds of stuff and playing. But then, while he was a student, he came to me and he said he wanted to start making bells and barrels and wanted to know if I'd play them. And at the time, I was playing another vendor's product, who I won't mention the name, but I was playing another vendor's product who at the time I liked that. It was certainly better than what I had had previously. And I said to him, well, look, if you're going to make a barrel or a bell, it's got to be significantly better than what I've got. If it's just the same, I shouldn't switch. But if you make something that's really better, I'll switch, because I'm not beholden to any one vendor. I just play what's the best, what sounds the best. But if it sounds about the same, I might as well stay with the guy I'm with. So anyhow, so we worked for a year or so in our studio at school, and he would bring in designs. I would suggest things. He had ideas, and he would bring in different designs each week and say, "Oh, try this barrel, try this bell, try this thing. Let's try this." And I would say, "Well, what if you do this? What if you do that?" Went through a whole bunch of different iterations, and finally. And we would do blind tests where we would play them for the class, for the studio, and say, which one do you like better? So we knew it was real, not just, personal visual preference or something. And finally, this one design, which ended up being what is called the Kohler Bell and the Kohler Barrel, was clearly the best. When we took a vote in the class, 100% of the people said that sounded better than everything else. Now, those are the ones that are the thickest and the heaviest and so forth, which I knew based on my physics background would make them sound the best. Exactly. The thick rims, it's got the extra extension inside, and also that the insides are highly polished and smooth, because any roughness in the surface on the interior degrades the sound. And, most barrels you get from, vendors like Buffet and Selmer, etc. If you put your finger inside a barrel or a bell, you'll feel the surface is not highly polished. But in the Royal products, the surfaces are highly polished inside, which means that the sound waves can retain more of their energy and their color. So anyhow, that's how we came up with those designs. Those were his first designs, the Kohler models, and he started selling those, and it was very successful right off the bat. And then he started coming up with new ideas. And then, of course, different players would come along and say, well, I like this, but could you make one that's a little thinner sounding or something? Because my sound is very big and fat, and some people like a thinner sound, So then he made the classical model, and then he came up with a Viennese model, and he started coming up with lots of different models. And then he started branching out into getting into more ideas about making clarinets. And I helped him incorporate his company and gave him ideas on who he could collaborate with on different things, and helped him along the way. And he's just taken off like a rocket ship now. He's everywhere.
Yeah, that's, I mean, there are a couple other cool things I just want to mention. And Austin, I'm going to give you a chance to ask Jonathan any questions as well. But, I have to say, you mentioned one thing about, Ewan being a great cook, a great chef. And, I actually also visited China. Ironically, it was October of 2019. Both Austin and I went out to visit the royal facilities. We went to the Shanghai show. And I got to tell you, we were treated very well in terms of culinary experiences.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one thing that I really appreciate about Gao, and that is he loves to eat, and it's high quality food. And so that was a really great experience for us, not only to see what Royal was doing, developing, especially hearing you talk about the early years, to what has happened now, and even in the last year or two as we've grown. But just the trajectory is pretty large. And when we think about clarinet companies, a lot of times we think about these companies with several 100-year histories, but this is basically a small, I want to say family owned, because all of the other manufacturers started off as families, but usually business takes over. Where here we just want the products to be better. So hearing you talk about that, the physics of it, especially someone like me who also has experimented with making my own accessories and polishing different bores and different ways. That's just really cool to hear that origin story.
Yeah, Ewan has been a hard worker all along, and in the early days, he personally made and fine-tuned every single product that went out the door. And as he started to grow and get more popular, I said to him, look, you're going to have to find ways that you don't do every single thing if you want to be able to produce larger numbers. And so over time, he's done that amazingly. He's found great partners. He's built his factory in China, where they have all the CMC technology there. He still does the finishing work on his high-end products, but he's produced consistently products across the board at every price point that blow away the competition at the given point in the market. So he'll come in with a product, whatever it is, let's say it's a product for $1,000 that is better than the competitive products at $2,000. So every time he's coming in with something that is way more affordable and better at the same time in the same level. And he has them from student level up to the highest level of professional models and things. So it's very impressive what he's done. He's become a really savvy businessman.
You're right. He really has. So you talked a little bit about the barrel and the bell. What about the Basset Clarinet? How did that sort of come about? Was that something you approached Ewan about? And was that like you wanted to do the CD, so you had to have the Basset, or you wanted the Basset, so you had to do the Mozart CD? How did that develop?
Well, it dates back to in the early 90s, around 91, I played the Boston premiere of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, played correctly on the Basset Clarinet with an edition that I edited. And now, by the way, I've published my edition of the concerto, which you can get the full score, the orchestra parts, and the clarinet part, and the Basset Clarinet part, with an extensive introduction that I wrote and completely re-edited. But anyhow, that goes with the CD too, by the way. But so in 91, I played the premiere of this, and the only Basset clarinets available at that time that you could get there was just a couple, and one of the main one was the LeBlanc, which now the company doesn't exist anymore. So I got a LeBlanc. I believe Charlie Neidick had the same model when he recorded it, because he recorded it around 93 or 4 for Deutsche Grammophon, and he recorded on that same LeBlanc Basset clarinet. So I had that clarinet, and I played the premiere on that. But because I was playing Rossi, I was never very happy with the sound and intonation and articulation of that, but it was the only clarinet that I could play it on, And so over time, I just decided we got to have a new Basset clarinet because there's nothing out there. And eventually Buffet came out with one that was pretty good, but you can't really get them from Buffet. You call Buffet and you try to order one. I tried for a while to get one and then just gave up. People would say, oh, I can get you one. 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then they wouldn't show up. So I don't think Buffet advertises it, but I don't believe they really have it because nobody's been able to get it in recent time. But there are some others out there, but none of them are really that great. Yamaha has one that's not bad. But so I came to you and I said, look, I have this LeBlanc Basset that was okay, but it would need to be changed in the following, 25 ways in order to make something decent out of it. So I started telling him what I needed. And of course, it would have to incorporate the barrel and bell, which we already knew made the clarinet sound 100 times better. That alone, you take that barrel and bell and stick it on any clarinet, and immediately the instrument sounds like another level of instrument. So that alone was a big deal. But we wanted to get an instrument that was easy to play, easy to finger, and had good intonation, because intonation on the Basset clarinet is very difficult, especially because of that lower joint and all those extra holes. So he worked on it for, I'd say, about a year in the factory in China. And then we got the instrument back, and then I started playing on it, and then we did more adjusting here. And then I even worked on it one time when Ewan was away. I did some work on it with Alcides.
Oh, they're in Atlanta now. Atlanta.
Right.
Atlanta.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Alcides spent a whole day with me working on the clarinet, and he and I fixed more things, adjusted intonation, adjusted the thumb key. Is very tricky because you want to have the thumb key in exactly the right position for playing the low C, so that you don't have to move this thumb very much to get the low C quickly. And so now the way it's designed now is perfect. It has exactly the right location. A lot of the other ones don't have this correct design. But this instrument is just a beautiful design. I pick this up, I can play anytime. So that was the story. And then I recorded the Mozart on it. We actually did the Mozart recording in the summer of 2018, and then it was published and released in the summer of 2020. So it's been a project that's been ongoing for a while, and Ewan has made them, and I know they're in some of his Basset clarinets are in South America. I believe Cristiano Alves has one who plays principal in the Rio Orchestra, and they're all over the world. I mean, it's a phenomenal instrument, and if you listen to that recording, I think you'll like it.
Yeah, and I have, and it's great. And I just want to say, I remember the Clarinet Fest that was, I believe it was in Knoxville. Is that right? And we had a booth right next to yours, and two things. One, that we had the Firebirds for the first time that at that Clarinet Fest, and they've gone through a few changes since then. But I remember we put your bell on. You just handed us your Kohler Bell. And the instruments were good, but we put that bell on, and suddenly both of our eyes, I remember, Austin, I'm sure you do too, just sort of lit up at the change. And again, I'm a guy, look, I sell my own products. I'm always about whatever sound works for you. Not everybody prefers this change or that change, but certainly those, that bell and that iteration of the instrument just made it sound much better. In fact, my wife, by the way, plays on one of your bells, on one of her Firebirds. Yeah, she has a set of Firebirds, and it's either the A or the B flat. She plays on one of your bells, and it's really great. The other thing is, I remember you being at that conference, and I was going to say that, and you had your all of your CDs and your scores out, the new scores that you had done, and those went really, really well. A lot of people were really excited about that. So the other thing you mentioned, and this is really important, I really want to talk about it a little bit. A lot of times we think about things made in China negatively, and a lot of times for good reason. We got to be honest, right? There's a lot of low quality stuff, not just clarinets. We're talking products of all kinds from a lot of countries that produce things cheaply. But we have to separate just a general made in China label from a factory that happens to just be in China that's making things at a high quality level. So, for example, someone told me recently, "Oh, I will never play clarinet made in China." And I asked them, I said, "Well, what if you took any of the other manufacturers, just name any of your favorite one, and you took that factory and all their workers and you just moved them to a new location, does that actually change the quality of the work? Sure, it might change the price of the labor, but it's about how it's made, and it's about who's making it, and it's high quality materials, and if they're made consistently. And so the question I have for you is, I've certainly seen Royal change over the last several years from having partners to then doing everything sort of in-house. How have you seen Royal change over the years in terms of the manufacturing, the consistency, the quality, et cetera?
Well, from the difference is, if you go back 20 years, 25 years, yeah, in China, there were a lot of low quality factories producing a lot of copied things. But that is not the story. That has nothing to do with the story of Royal Global at all. In fact, when Ewan started out, he was doing all the manufacturing here, okay, 100% of it. And the difference is, Ewan is a first-rate clarinet player. He had already won when he was 16. He won all kinds of international. He won first prize in the All China competition, the college level All China competition, when he was 16. And then he won first prize in the international young artist, what is that called? Famous competition in Romania. And so he'd already won major competitions before coming here. And he was coming at the problem by designing a product at the highest level, not an entry level, fifth grade clarinetist, plastic cheap clarinet. He was designing the highest level of professional product. And so he figured out all of the design things first, and initially did all of the product work here. He would only, I remember when he first started out, I think it was his dad was doing some initial, with the wood, maybe he'd put it on a lathe and do some initial cuts and then sort of send the raw pieces to Ewan, and Ewan would do all of the finishing work here, that kind of thing. But as he grew, he decided he needed to get the CNC machines and be able to produce the high quality designs that he had perfected faster. And so now he has this high quality factory in China, totally supervised and run by him. He's in touch with them every day. Except for COVID, he's going there 4 times a year, to be there for weeks at a time. And so they're always retooling. They're always making sure they have the highest quality stuff available. So what he does, and what was traditionally done in a lot of places in China, it's a totally different world. I remember one of the first times I've been going to China, as I say, for like 25 years. When I first went, they had no money. They had, no instruments, broken clarinets, no sheet music, no nothing. Buildings were terrible. The schools were broken down and dirty. The entire thing has changed now from a third world nation to a first world nation. I mean, you go to their schools now and they have the newest buildings, the newest technology, Steinway brand new pianos everywhere. It's a complete change in the whole scenario. The Chinese government invested heavily in music and music education. So all the conservatories have multiple new high-rise buildings, and so what's happened over time is the level of playing there has risen dramatically, and every Chinese kid who's studying clarinet is playing on the best stuff now, Whereas when I used to go there, they couldn't get anything, nothing. You'd come and you'd have to give them, they had a broken clarinet and a few reeds and no mouthpiece, So the whole world has changed now, and Ewan has created a company that's producing the highest level of instrument in the world. And I think it's fair to say he's probably the most innovative too. If you look, all the companies come out with new models every year here and there, but Ewan comes out with more new stuff than anybody, as far as I can tell. He's constantly thinking of new ideas, ways of making it better, and not all the same things that everybody else is doing,
Yeah, and I have to just talk a little bit from my own experience. I mean, of course, I work with them, almost every day. We're in communication, and I can absolutely vouch for all of the work he does directly with the factory, every day. Again, before the pandemic, it's like every 2 months he was there for a while. And I can absolutely vouch to the fact that he just cares about the quality and wants to improve. So every new batch of instruments that we get, the actual design is always good. It doesn't necessarily, the design itself isn't a major change, but we're talking little things. For example, we just reorganize this mechanism to be easier to adjust, or let's try this plating here, or let's try this there, and we get feedback, and we're always adjusting. So he has a 2021 model. In 2022, it'll be a different version that'll be somehow even better. Right now, the instruments that are coming, I don't know how they can get any better, but I'm really excited to see how that plays out. So Austin, talk a little bit about your experience with some of these instruments, because I know that you've had experience with your students and your colleagues with these instruments.
Oh yeah, I have lots of colleagues and students that play on Royal Global instruments all over the world. In Brazil, many of the distributors of Royal Global and are former students of mine. I introduced, as Ewan started his company with first with the bells and barrels and later with the clarinets, I would introduce them to my students and say, I'm playing on this stuff. It's great. It sounds better than anything else out there. And so I would recommend it to people. So my students tended to start playing on. I don't force my students to do that, but if they want to, they can, and they hear it sounds better, they want to do it, right? So lots of them started doing it. So if you go to some of his markets, like in Brazil, I think 3/4 of the clarinetists there are playing Royal Global, and many of those are either students of mine or students of mine. So, my students play in the main orchestra in Sao Paulo, in the orchestra in Minas Gerais, in the orchestras in Rio de Janeiro, in all over Brazil are students of mine playing in these orchestras, and almost all of them, as far as I know, are playing on Royal Global stuff now. And I've played, I play both on Royal Global and on Rossi. I have the Royal Global Basset Clarinet. I've played the Rossi Clarinet for many years, but with the Royal Global Bell and the Royal Global Barrel, right? And I've also played on the Firebird Clarinet from time to time too, as well, on some of my tours. And the quality of these instruments is just it's something special, because I think, it's the same thing at Royal Global as it is at Rossi, which is kind of unique in the business, which is the person running the company and doing the final touches on all their top instruments is a first-rate international level clarinet player. Okay. Now, of course, all the clarinet makers have clarinetists in their factories testing instruments and so forth, but they're not. First of all, the big companies are too big to keep track of everything, and they don't have the person at the top, signing off on all their best instruments. So, if you get a fine instrument from Yuan Gao, he's tested it. He's won many international competitions. So, it's good. If you get a clarinet from Luis Rossi, he's a great clarinetist. He's personally tested it. You get it from the Buffet factory, I don't know who, tester number 75 has tested it, right? You have no idea. And so it's not to say that they make bad clarinets. They all make good clarinets, but I think it's a different level. With Royal Global, you're really talking about the highest level of quality and innovation there is in the clarinet world.
Jonathan, it's so great to hear you talk about, the experience of working with somebody who is also a top-rate clarinet player, because that's one of the things that I found. I've sold other brands, and by the way, anybody watching this, I am not like this brand wars guy. I think people should just play on whatever's best for them.
Right.
But everything has a different value, right? So, for example, you mentioned the $4,000 clarinet from Royal. That may be twice that amount from another manufacturer of similar quality. But he sends, as the USA distributor, he's always sending things for me to give my opinion on, and he's asking for opinions from other clarinet players and other repair technicians. And basically, what happens, although he has the final say, he's understanding that, okay, this market likes this, or this market likes that, or these repair technicians say will be easier to do this. And I just have to say, this is all because he has 100% control over his factory, so that I can say, hey, I want to buy another batch of these instruments, for the USA. Can you make sure we try this or that? Let's see how that goes. And it comes and it either works or it doesn't. And if it's great and it's an improvement, people love it. And if it's not, although that rarely happens, we don't sell it. So it's so good to hear you talk about that experience, because I do think it's different when you're buying a clarinet made by a clarinetist, whether it's Luis Rossi or it's, in this case, Royal Global.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's critical. And I've played on many other products from you and over the years. Some of them have come and gone because I guess whatever the market forces, or it just wasn't as profitable. But I remember he used to make a ligature that I played on for a long time, which had a carbon fiber backing on it, which had a really nice sound. And I played for many years on the Van Doren Optimum ligature, but then I was also playing on Ewan's carbon fiber backed with a leather, a wraparound leather type with the single screw. But the carbon fiber backing was totally unique. Nobody had thought of that. And that's a great material because it takes out the metallic vibrations, but it allows it's hard enough that it gives the reed the freedom to vibrate. So it has the advantages of the metal without the disadvantages of the metal. And that, again, was another unique thing that he came up with. I think he doesn't make those anymore just because probably it's not, profitable enough, or not enough people want it. Nowadays, I play on the Silverstein ligature, which seems to be popular with lots of people. I really enjoy the sound of that. I've been a Silverstein artist now for a couple of years. But it's nice to have, the best of all the worlds. I'm a Van Doren artist. I'm a Royal Global artist. I'm a Rossi artist. I'm a Silverstein artist, and I'm a Gaku Records artist. So I just pick and choose wherever I can find a great product. That's what I play. And Royal Global has consistently, produced some of the best stuff in the world.
Absolutely, I agree. I also play on that same ligature, by the way. My wife does. It just works. We don't care about the name or the look or whatever. If it works for us. So, I highly encourage everybody to check out different equipment. There you go.
There it is.
And as much as I love that artists can come together, I just want to say that, at the end of the day, it's not about who's playing what, right? It's about, do they trust the brand? Can you trust the brand to make a great product? Does it work for you? And that's why when I look at, whether it's your studio or other studios, when I think about diversity, I think about diversity in not just the traditional ways that people talk about it, but I think about it in diversity of equipment and diversity of sounds. What do you need to get that sound out of you? And in many cases, it's, it might be a piece of equipment that you maybe didn't think about previously.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's what I do with my students. There are some teachers, more so in the past than now, but some teachers would almost kind of force their students, maybe not force them, but through whatever, group pressure, to play the exact same equipment that they were playing no matter what. I don't do that. And I find in my studios, some of the students will be playing some of the stuff that I have, that kind of thing. But there's a huge diversity. I remember one year some years we'll have one person on a Yamaha, one person on a Wurlitzer, one person on a Royal Global, one person on a Rossi, and one person on a Buffet. I mean, like all different instruments, different mouthpieces. But the key is it's got to sound good. And so if they don't sound good, I tell them that right away. I say, that doesn't sound good. Stop. Don't do that. I remember I had a great student from Macedonia once, a very talented guy. And he's a well-known clarinetist in Macedonia. But when he came to me into his first lesson with me, he had his fingers moved pretty well, but he had the most bright, disgusting sound. Oh, I just couldn't stand it because he hadn't been taught about sound. He was playing way too soft to read. Everything was bright and brittle and ugly. He played 3 or 4 measures, and I said, "Stop. I never want to hear that ever again." I think he had a case of shock right at that point. His teacher in his first lesson was saying, "Stop. I never want to hear that again." Right? So that was a good experience because it was a learning experience, and he very quickly learned how to make a good sound.
Right. And I'll just say, I personally appreciate teachers who are always straightforward with me. Don't waste my time. right? So if it was me as a student, I would say, great, I'm ditching this. Let's find out something else, that works. So that's really great to hear. Before, I'd like to ask you just any last thoughts about Royal Global that you have, but I want people to first make sure that they at least go and check out a couple things you mentioned, your Mozart Scores and CD, which I know are available today. Go grab those, take a listen to the recording. Certainly it's a great recording to buy, not only to hear the Royal Global Basset, but to hear Mozart done in a way that we think is probably one of the best ways to do it, right?
And by the way, the music, as you can see, has this picture of the CD on the cover. So this edition of the music is exactly what's on the recording. So if you get this edition of the music, you can get the full score if you want to, the orchestra score. It all matches exactly what you'll hear on the recording. So that's the second in my Kohler Plays series. The first was this Kohler does the plays and conducts Weber, and soon next year we'll be coming out with Kohler Plays and conducts Copland. But the next CD I've got coming out is next month, which is called Latin Journey, and that contains all of the Latin music that I perform a lot, and some of which was dedicated to me and so forth, including Guastavino Sonata music by Paquito di Rivera and Arturo Marquez, the Zarabandeo, and a lot of other things. So it's going to be a fun release next month.
Well, we're looking forward to that. I hope everybody will check that out. In addition to Kohler Classical, by the way, that audio editing software package that you've got, I would love for people to check that out. And any last words for people about Royal Global or your experience with Yuan Gao, or anything you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I would say if you've never tried something from Royal Global, you absolutely should, because you'll come away saying, wow. I mean, literally every product he has is special. It's not like anything else, whether it's that cool adjustable barrel that he has now, whether it's one of his clarinets, whether it's the Kohler Bell, or he has I don't know, probably 4 or 5 different models of Bell now. But that you'll find any one of those products, you won't find anything like it anywhere else, because he's from day one, he decided to not go down the traditional path of making a clarinet like everybody else. I mean, when you go to all the other manufacturers, they have unique features here and there, but the basic essence of those clarinets is very similar from manufacturer to manufacturer. When you go to a Royal Global, everything is new, and it's like, wow. So
well, thanks so much for being on with us. I hope people will, take this as a sign that we are growing in the clarinet industry into a very, diverse product package where you can get a lot of different things. It may work for you. Maybe the same thing that worked for your teacher might not work for you as well today. So just want to say thank you so much once again for being on, and we are excited to share this with everybody out there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.